Coming to you from inside the NBA bubble, I'm RJ Balde, and this is the TRICHOMES Hash podcast. On this show, we feature conversations about trending cannabis topics. We also bring in industry insiders and influencers to discuss their point of view. In this episode, I'll be talking to Jocelyn Sheltraw about the insights provided from data collected from cannabis consumers throughout numerous regions in the US and Canada. We'll also talk about the gender imbalance in the cannabis market, consumer trends before and after the coronavirus pandemic, and much more. Without further ado, let's hash it out. Today, I am joined by Jocelyn Sheltraw, Director of Strategy at the data aggregation platform Headset, a social justice advocate, and an overall cannabis enthusiast. Welcome to the show, Jocelyn.
RJ, what's happening? Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, it is all happening. And then at the same time, not a lot is happening. It's kind of weird. We're in a time of like too much and never enough, which is very interesting. I think that kind of summarizes 2020 in a nutshell. How's your year been so far? I know that's a loaded question, but
it's been a year of a great amount of presence. And it has been a lot of energy, and I feel like just 24/7 of my life is exerting energy in the things that I'm extremely passionate about. So I cannot complain. This time has actually been really beautiful for me, and just exerting that energy in the things that I really care about, cannabis included. So life is wonderful.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Has the pandemic, has the quarantine, have you felt any moments of overwhelming emotion or feeling, or has it really helped you sort of just lock in to what you want to focus on?
It's really helped me lock in. The past year in particular has been a year of deep self-exploration, a lot of exploration into spirituality. And so when I came, going into COVID, that intensity of my own exploration sort of became more intense in COVID. So from an emotional standpoint, I guess I should say, I use the word present because I'm just kind of flowing with it. I'm just rolling with it. And I think it's been my last year of deep self-exploration and this spiritual path that I've taken, which cannabis has been a part of that journey, has really enabled me to just be kind of calm and just flow with whatever is kind of thrown my way during this time. And it's been a lot. I'm working a lot on my normal job or researching stuff or my personal passions and hobbies every waking hour. And I think I'm really calm during this time because I've put in the work to understand myself. And now as I go into any challenges in life, I'm just able to navigate them that much easier. So it's been a really beautiful experience for me, testing myself in how I would kind of react in a situation like COVID.
Yeah, that's really great to hear that you are cultivating that spirituality during this time. Do you do like a meditation practice? Do you practice any mindfulness? Do you have a source material that you like to turn to?
Well, I think the best way to answer this question is, I guess, to kind of tell you about my story, which is connected to why I work in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, please.
And why I share so much openly on different social media platforms. So up until probably 2 or 3 years ago, I would have described my life as, I describe it often as I was like a leaf blowing in the wind. I really was living in this programmed mindset. I grew up in Orange County, and I've been living up in the Bay Area. I lived in San Francisco for 7 years, just moved to Oakland 6 weeks ago. But I had described my whole life as very programmed. And I wasn't really, it became such a painful place for me because I got really lost. I would be this leaf blowing in the wind, kind of moving to whatever I thought people thought I should be. And so I would change based on my surroundings. But what happened is that I had so little sense of self and who I was that it just kept leading me on these really amazing paths. Like my life has has been really full and incredible, but it never felt authentic to me. And so after several different experiences of different levels of pain, whether it was relationships that were extremely challenging or not feeling satisfied in expressing my true creative freedom or authentic self, that became very painful for me. And so 2 years ago, actually 2.5 years ago, so right before I joined the cannabis industry, I spent my career working in tech, and I was working with all these app developers the year the iPhone came out. And then I just started, I evolved in the industry as it continued to evolve. And so I sort of got, I don't want to say bored, but I really like to learn. I love challenging myself. It's a big part of kind of everything that I do physically, spiritually, mentally, all this kind of stuff. So anyways, I decided that I was going to leave tech and try something new. And so I decided to take 4 months off after leaving tech and just take this time to explore myself. And so prior to this, because I am a longtime cannabis enthusiast, I had been using cannabis to check out in a large degree.
Sure.
And so, but that was because I was living this programmed life to which I wasn't really sure who I was or what I was doing. And so it was very painful for me. So I would do things to kind of check out. Well, when I took this 4 months off, I became like a student of life. I just explored myself deeply. I picked up a couple different instruments. Like I learned to play guitar and the drums and sing. I learned to sail on the San Francisco Bay. I did a 6-week cooking program, a 6-week pottery course. I did everything that I wanted to do. Yeah. I just experienced fully. And what ended up happening is that I really started to understand who I am. I started to realize that I'm a very creative person, that I just hadn't really had these outlets prior or really pushed myself to explore different outlets. And then what started happening is I then started using cannabis to come into consciousness. I started to wake up. And so 2.5 years is really when I woke up and I realized that any experience that we have, it's really up to us and our mindset of how we use that thing. So cannabis for me started to become this connection point into greater levels of consciousness within myself. And so a lot of the work that I do today, or the reason that I believe in destigmatization and that I'm so vocal about how to use cannabis, it's not cannabis per se that I'm really it's not the driver for me. It's really consciousness. It's getting people to wake up. And I think the society and the world that we're living in today is a really great example of how asleep that we are. And so I think most people can relate to my experience because most people are asleep. It's not that many people that you meet that are really fully awake and living life to their fullest, capacity. And so I believe that there are many different things that can help someone understand themselves at a deeper level. And I believe cannabis can be one of those things. It is one of those things for me. And so that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about people living to their fullest, people experiencing and understanding their own creativity, because we're all creative beings, and really, really exploring that. And so that's, why I feel that with my background, with all of these different hobbies that I've sort of been fostering over these past 2 years, my writing work, photography, music, everything is all connecting right now. And I think people are responding to that. And I'm trying to be as open and share as much of my journey as possible in hopes that it will help other people find themselves as well.
Yeah, I love that. And you do such a great job of it too, on just to plug your social media one more time. Like it's just, it's really great because I definitely, so much gets lost in social media, in the internet, and you lose a lot of that human touch. But I certainly get that from you and what you choose to share. Now, you mentioned that you started in ad tech before you entered the cannabis industry. At the time of the first iPhone, is that right?
Yeah. My first real job out of college, I was working for the ad agency in Orange County, and we were provisioning all these like short codes. So remember the days, the flip phone days, when it would get those messages, text this short code to this number and get deals and all that kind of stuff, which we see a lot of in the cannabis industry today. It's the same thing. But I really started working on the technology that enabled that to happen. and then just evolved with the industry, and then started helping do the project management of some major apps. Like I helped build Subway's first mobile ordering app.
Wow.
I've worked on Flipboard and SoundCloud and Spotify and Pandora and a bunch of different apps that we all use today, whether it's on the build of those apps or doing the advertising or the monetization for those apps.
Wow. Yeah. And you mentioned the ad tech space when you got into it was very much a wild west at the time, similar to how the cannabis market is now. In your vision, how do the two spaces compare when it comes to the level of growth and innovation in a relatively short period of time?
I'm noticing more and more comparisons as the time goes on, especially on the investment side.
Sure.
Unregulated, high growth and emerging industries are really, really interesting to me. And that's the real parallel that I see between ad tech and cannabis. So, a few years after the iPhone came out, that's when you really started to see a lot more investment into the space. And it was sort of the same influx of investors and same excitement from individuals wanting to get in. And that excitement almost overpowers what the real opportunity looks like yet, because we really don't know what it's going to look like. And so you saw this rush of investment coming in. And then within a few short years, we started to see a lot of consolidation and a little bit of, scaredness from the market of not really knowing what this is and really understanding like, oh, wow, we just rushed to get in because we wanted to get in. And again, programmed mindset. And not really asking tough questions just because you want to be a part of something, which is fine and wonderful. And that's, I suppose, what we need to some capacity. But I see that a lot of that now. So, the past year or two in particular, investment has dried up. And I think we're all wondering, what is this going to look like? And so that same thing happened in tech. And hopefully we're just a few short years from us really starting to see what cannabis could be.
Yeah. And the data that is provided by Headset really certainly is helping to shed a light on that.
Right.
So you mentioned that you took a 4-month hiatus to rediscover yourself before entering the cannabis space. I understand you were contacted directly by the creators of Headset, who are the same people who founded Leafly. Is that right?
Yeah. So Cy, Brian, and Scott are the original founders of Leafly. They started Leafly out of Orange County, and I'm an Orange County native myself. But at the last company that I was working for before taking that 4 months off, one of my colleagues happened to be Cy, our CEO's neighbor. And so he had said to Cy, I know this woman who is very passionate about cannabis. She loves Leafly because, as a longtime cannabis enthusiast, obviously that was the first way I really understood what a strain was like or what a high was like. And so I really respected, and coming from the app space and just how beautiful the app was that they designed and the mobile site, I really respected what they did. So he put us in contact, and, we met up for coffee in San Francisco when Cy was in town. And then we just kept in touch over like this year-long period. And so when I decided that I was going to lead ad tech, I hit him up and said, hey, I'm going to take some time off. Are you... what's going on over there? And they were just in the middle of, they just raised the seed round. And so it just all worked out, and he needed someone to start California. And I have that kind of hustle and that background. And so it's been 2 years of a crazy, beautiful journey with Headset. And the information that we're providing, I feel, is making a huge impact on the industry. So it's really exciting to be a part of Headset. It's been so exciting to be a part of the California market since year one of adult use. But that's really how I got into it.
Congratulations on the 2 years. July 16th, right? Was marked the 2 years?
I think so. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Something like that.
Congrats.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. Now, tell me a little more about the service. So I know it's a service that uses a direct connection to the point of sale system with dispensaries to aggregate and report on market trends. Can you tell me more about the specific services that Headset offers with the data it collects?
Yeah. So Headset, we are a cannabis data company, but we're really a software company at our core.
Mm.
So we
Hmm.
have three different main pieces of technology, and then we have a bunch of other services that I'll explain.
Hmm.
But our core ecosystem or our infrastructure consists of three different platforms. So the way that this works is that our first platform is called Retailer, and this is used by dispensaries, and it is used on top of their point of sale system, and it ingests all their point of sale data and then turns it into much more actionable visualizations and reports that the retailer uses for inventory management, understanding how their sales staff is performing, understanding how
Mm.
vendor days perform. Are they profitable? Did that promotion take a loss? And then understanding their consumer demographics. And, point of sale systems haven't really built out deep analytics at this point, and these also tend to be two separate businesses in more mature consumer packaged goods industries. And so we're really this, neutral Switzerland player that partners in with 24 different point of sale systems and is really that analytics leg on behalf of the point of sale system. So we offer this platform for free to the retailer for the inventory pieces. We do have a premium upgraded version of it to understand their customer demographics data,
Hmm.
understand what people are buying, basket analysis, understanding where users are coming from, what products they like to purchase, etc. And then the second piece of the ecosystem is that so the retailer can directly share their real-time sell-through rates with the brands. So this product is
Hmm.
called Bridge, and this is used by the brands. And prior to this product existing, because Headset's been around for 5 years, a lot of the way that a brand would understand how much inventory they had left in a store was simply by calling the shop and saying, "Hey, what's in stock?" And then keeping track of all of that via Excel or pen and paper. And so we've really helped, I don't want to say automate because it's not like it is automated in a sense, but it's just real time sell through rates. And then the third platform is our insights platform. That's all the market data. So to that read, what we do is all of that point of sale data that we're collecting, we aggregate that data and then we anomalize it. So we get rid of any privacy information. And
Hmm.
then we run a bunch of different methodologies. So comparing the numbers to state and city tax data. We have sample sizes from retailers in rural versus suburban areas. So we make sure that
Mm.
all of the sample of data that we have is reflective of the entire state or the entire market. And so we have our insights platform turned on in 8 different markets at this point. So California, Colorado, Washington, Nevada, we're able to provide real-time reads there. Soon to turn on Oregon in just a couple weeks here. And then we're reporting on 3 Canadian provinces, so BC, Ontario, and Alberta. But we then offer the software. We're in 30 different markets, 1,100 different retailers. We've tracked almost 11 billion transactions. And so it's been really interesting and fun to just watch the technology mature within the industry and really see operators start to understand how it can help them. Because, just a few short
Mm.
years ago, everyone was kind of flying blind.
Yeah, for sure. And Headset, if I have this correct, is the first company to be able to report data in Canada. Is that right?
We are, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, we're the first company
That
to
is awesome.
be able to do this. Yeah, it's been really impactful for any market to understand because again, people, we were just flying blind as an industry prior.
Hmm. Yeah, and Canada's going through their they're calling it Cannabis 2.0. It's like this.
Mhm.
They're breaking down regulations for non-flower cannabis products. So it's a really great time for you to be able to access that data.
Right.
Now, I understand a lot of your work specifically is in strategy and operations here in California. Can you break that down for me a little?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for our West Coast strategy and operations. So I'm focused on California, Arizona, and Oregon primarily. Uh,
Got it.
and so, mostly what I do is a lot of conversations like this. So I spend my
Hmm.
days in a lot of Zoom meetings and I'm getting to know different parts of the supply chain. I'm mostly talking to retailers, brands, investors, and I do a lot of work with our city and state associations.
Hmm.
And simply what I'm doing is explaining what Headset does. I'm talking about how do you incorporate a data strategy into your overall strategy. And then I present any of the interesting findings that we're learning. And so I'm really our kind of boots on the ground,
Yeah.
networker, and then passing off this information to our appropriate team members internally. And then we all kind of work together to bring some of this to life. I think a lot of my work, it's evangelist work really, because this is
Yeah.
just so new, like technology and data as a whole for the cannabis industry. And if you think about a lot of legacy operators, this is not how people were operating their businesses before. So oftentimes we find that this is the first time they're really thinking about data whatsoever, or understanding that these kind of technology solutions exist.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our team comes from CPG and retail backgrounds, to which this is just the way that it works in grocery spaces and in traditional retail spaces, alcohol and beverage. And so a lot of this is education work, really.
Yeah, because the idea of breaking down consumer data isn't, like you said, a very new idea, but in the cannabis industry, it is, like you said. You said that a lot of your work is spreading education about the access to this data and how it can help dispensaries and cannabis companies and brands. I would imagine that you usually do a lot of traveling to do this. Have you been affected at all by the pandemic in terms of your work and how much traveling you've been doing?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was on the road every week.
Yeah.
And when I was in ad tech too. So like my 7 years living up in the Bay Area, I've been traveling pretty much every week or every other week. I was rarely home. So yeah, this has
Mm.
certainly changed my entire life. This is the longest that I've been in one place in my adult life. But everything has just moved to Zoom. And so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
actually worked out quite well for me, because I now am networking and meeting so many more people and having these kind of conversations. And so the evangelist work and spreading the word about what we're doing has actually been made significantly easier during
Mm-hmm.
this time. But I miss
Mm-hmm.
people. I miss being, the energy of being in person. And I love all of the cannabis events that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And, just being part of the community is so important. And so, but it works on Zoom, it's
Yeah.
every day this is what I'm doing. So,
you know, California is so large. It has so many regions. It has so many different micro cultures and communities within it. A lot of the times like Northern California and Southern California can feel like completely different states.
mhm.
And I understand that Headset actually has access to the data on consumer differences and demographics between the different regions of California. Has that data been released yet? And if not, is there a timeline for when we can expect for that data to be released?
Yeah, so we haven't released that data in our Insights platform. We
Mm-hmm.
certainly have it in raw data, as we're aggregating everything and we have visibility into it. But we have not really done any in-depth analysis breaking apart Northern and Southern California trends yet.
Mm-hmm.
In part, we have to make sure we have a strong enough sample size of all the data. So we need to continue increasing our retail adoption to be able to do that. And again, that goes back to the work that I do and really educating the market. It's been very interesting seeing, it's a free product that we offer, and we want to
Yeah.
train people how to use it, become mini analysts. But getting over the kind of hump of how this can be helpful and what this does has been a challenge, quite frankly. And so as soon as we continue to increase our adoption and it gets stronger in local municipalities, and we'll be able to get much more granular with the data that we report on.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully over the next quarter or so, we'll be able to start doing more reads for like Los Angeles specifically versus San
Yeah.
Francisco and Oakland, because yes, there are very different consumer trends. I mean, and in reality, California, from like a policy perspective, I think it's 189 of our municipalities out of 482 municipalities have actually allowed cannabis businesses. So even though we wrote it in Prop 64, a vast majority of California doesn't actually have legal cannabis businesses. And so I think that's one of the struggles that we have, and why we see it actually really comes down to three reasons, in my opinion, that we have, and I think many other people's opinions, why California probably isn't moving at the same rate that we would have expected it to at this time. And a lot of it does come down to licensing. In cities like Los Angeles. I'm sure you're following the licensing that's been happening there. I think there's 180 shops that are open in LA County, and there's 100 new licenses that were issued, plus 100 new on top of that to make up for all of the challenges that happened with, equity licenses and that being rigged. And so anyways,
Certainly.
I say all this because, so many of these municipalities don't actually have legal shops within them. And then, or the cities that do, our taxes are so high. Companies aren't really, thriving in terms of ROI. And then because of these things, it really, amplifies our illicit market, which, numbers that have been given out there are around 80% of California's illicit market sales. And so, we really need to open up licensing. But as I go to a lot more city council meetings and as I start to work with different communities, I see how there is just so much misunderstanding about what cannabis is and what it could be. And it's also very interesting to see, as we're in this economic downturn, and I would think that more cities would be interested in opening up to cannabis businesses, but we're just getting over this major misunderstanding of what it's all about. And so we look at, like, Anaheim was just voting on opening up to licensing a couple of month and a half ago, and that didn't pass. And so that will set a precedent. Fullerton is gonna vote soon, and I'm assuming that that's probably not going to pass. And it's interesting to see how a lot of city officials and policymakers aren't necessarily communicating and sharing information about what's working and what isn't. And so they just keep reinventing the wheel. And so that's why I'm so passionate about just kind of openly talking about it. And when I go to a lot of these meetings, you tend to see the same, 20 activists that are showing up at these meetings. And so, I think it's really important that we kind of use our voice. And if you are passionate about this, then it's important to help city officials understand what the upside could be here.
Certainly. Now, I also want to talk about this because you do advocacy work for social justice reform. Where do you see the potential and the need and necessity to advocate for women's roles in the cannabis industry?
Well, so I'm really about diversity as a whole is important to me.
Sure.
And it's because, okay, so when I was working in tech, it was a very insular world for me, especially living in San Francisco at the peak of tech. And so I found that I actually didn't even realize this until I joined the cannabis industry. I didn't realize how insular my world was. I didn't realize how insular my view was. And so I was surrounded by a particular group of thought. And then I joined the cannabis industry and my entire world opened up because I started meeting people of all different backgrounds, all different races, everything was completely different. And I have such a love of people and curiosity for understanding different individuals. And so for me, I'm just seeing how incredible people are of all backgrounds. And we just, again, because of this programmed mindset, we tend to believe that one thing is better than another. And we just generally kind of fear what we don't understand. And so as I started to get to know different kinds of people and see the value and the skill sets and how much those contributions would help not just the cannabis industry, but our society as a whole, that's what my passion is. So women, but it's races, it's everything. It's just, it's more an individual level that I'm interested in diversity and individual level of thought, because I see the impact that it has when you put together different passionate mindsets.
Sure. And I love that. And certainly one of the most important ways to achieve diversity is to give a platform to diverse voices. You know what I mean? Let them be heard, which I think is great. That's a very noble and necessary undertaking. Now, I want to talk about the an industry report that was released by Headset in March. It was a report that included a study on the gender imbalance in cannabis consumers. It showed that men make up at least 60% of the cannabis consumer market across all generations, from the silent generation to Gen Z. Now, that isn't too surprising given the overrepresentation of men in the market and the patriarchal construct of societal systems. But where if anywhere, are you seeing the opportunities to balance the market and to grow the non-man audience?
Yeah, I think it's making more product that we know women are interested in purchasing. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, women tend to purchase more pre-rolls than men, or
Mm.
women are also purchasing, non-inhalables more than men. So, topicals and capsules and tinctures. And so I think when we have more product diversity in marketing that is targeted and built for women, that's when we're going to start to see women being more interested in products. But
Mm-hmm.
as product, again, this is the reason for the need of diversity. When you're
Yeah.
only having a limited view and people are building those products and then building the marketing around those products, you're gonna cut out people that you aren't thinking about. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity, because yes, it's men currently make up 67% of the cannabis wallet. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing right now, like especially during COVID, we're seeing increases in sales in non-inhalables. So edibles, we've seen increases, beverages. And so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that, I think we're going to start to see more women, because those are consumption methods that women would prefer. And so really being able to build a brand that a woman feels comfortable purchasing and is excited about purchasing is going to attract more women into the market.
Mm-hmm. And the study also noted that women are more likely to buy wellness products, which, with the CBD craze, I feel like those products have become a lot more not only noticeable, but also available to people. And then, the fact that you can ship CBD also, I would imagine, helps.
Yeah. And it's interesting because women's purchase size is a lot larger than a male's as well. So
Oh.
they have, larger purchase spends. So,
Hmm.
but I think, and this is a reason why it's really important to kind of understand the data of what's happening, because I think when people start to understand that and the buying power that a woman has, and if you just think about who does most of the grocery shopping, it's
Mm.
women. And so, really understanding that and being able to use that to your advantage, I think would be incredibly impactful for brands. And so their purchasing power is more than men, and I don't know off the top of my head the difference in it, but it is a fairly sizable difference.
And you also mentioned that uh, consumable cannabis products like edibles or beverages and tinctures and things like that have seen jumps in sales as well, as opposed to, from what the data shows, as opposed to smokable cannabis products or pre-rolls and joints and things like that.
Yeah, pre-rolls definitely took a hit, but the interesting thing is it's not all pre-rolls. So it's like we've started to see smaller package size pre-rolls, little dog walkers.
Mm.
Those are doing quite well. So
Mm.
Sublime, for example, which is a wonderful producer out of Oakland, they're killing it. They've literally blown up that category. And so they're doing very, very well. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this comes down to understanding the package sizes and trends that are happening there. Like, for example, the vape market, half
Mm-hmm.
gram package sizes were really most popular prior to COVID. And then now we've seen 1 gram package
Mm-hmm.
sizes overtake half-gram package sizes since COVID. So it's really
Oh,
understanding, the nuances
wow.
of that package size, the ratio, from THC to CBD. There's so many different nuances there that some categories aren't hit as hard. Or, for example, more premium
Mm-hmm.
brands have also done okay. So I think people who are interested, who have disposable income, people who are interested in purchasing these premium brands, they still continue to purchase them. And so they've really stuck with that. And then we've also seen the value brands definitely increase in popularity, larger package sizes as well for flower during COVID. People are making less trips, so that certainly makes sense.
And speaking of COVID, how has that impacted the market? Because, when the lockdown started in March, there were a lot of headlines about people lining up outside of dispensaries for hours, making stockpile and panic purchases. That was back in March. How have you seen that impact on the market? How has the pandemic impacted the market? Pretty much is the question.
So that has been a wild ride for our analysts to kind of keep track of. So prior to COVID, the cannabis industry, we started to see very typical trends like we would see in other consumer packaged goods industries. So we would see these spikes in sales at the end of the month when people had more disposable income left in their paychecks. Friday, that was always, the highest day of sales. In fact, Friday to Sunday, cannabis, the percentage of sales was 48% of sales would happen between Friday to Sunday. Well, since COVID and this predictability, it makes it a lot easier for every part of the supply chain, right? Because retailers can get on a schedule knowing, demand planning, essentially. Product producers are able to make product based off of all this demand. Well, since COVID, there has not been this stability. So we see these spikes and these decreases across all of these states, which the main thing that's causing them is like, as soon as we saw a shelter in place order go into effect, then within the next day or two, that's when you see the spike happen. And so right after like California and Colorado and Washington announced their shelter in place orders, I mean, we were seeing the spike equivalent of what you would see on 420. So people certainly were going out. They were stockpiling, much like we saw with, toilet paper and packaged goods. So the same thing happened in cannabis. And then it started to kind of trickle out after that and just kind of even out. And then, we had 420 in the midst of COVID. And so this was obviously like a really big year for us because it was 4/20/20.
Yeah.
And so what happened there is that instead of seeing the spike of sales on 4/20, it just was more evened out throughout the week. And so people, because they're furloughed and working from home, instead of seeing that 48% of sales happening on Friday to Sunday and more evening purchases, start to see it spread out more throughout the week. And so there isn't this predictability and trend anymore of when people are purchasing. And so our analysts are keeping a very close eye on this. And we just don't know. It's very unpredictable right now. And so that obviously creates challenges for the entire supply chain. So I hear a lot of product producers talking about, either over or under supply issues. And so this has made it hard for retailers to operate efficiently. It's made it hard for us as consumers to get access to the products or the brands that we're most interested in having. And so, we don't know yet what the world is going to look like. And it just continues to keep us on our toes and change on a regular basis.
We obviously, like you said, don't really know what the future is going to hold right now, especially in this time. I feel like it's so difficult now for individuals and companies to even focus on the long term because of how pressing the current state is. And I know nothing is guaranteed, but do you have any predictions for the future? Because in a lot of ways, the spike in the market sort of almost resembled our our coronavirus curve. So there was that huge spike. And then as we flattened the curve, as we did do our part to flatten the curve, those stockpile purchases sort of waned off. Now as everything has reopened, our curve has gone back up. It kind of looks like a skateboarding half pipe almost. So do you have any predictions as to how that might affect the market? Are you seeing any of those effects now?
I mean, cannabis sales are still continuing to grow in every market.
Okay.
So right now in 2020, sales in all of our markets are expected to surpass $15 billion by the end of this year. And that is 40% higher than we had seen in 2019. But in 2019, sales were 80% higher than they were in 2018.
Right.
And so we're not growing, and that's for California. So we're not growing at the same rate as which we were prior. But this isn't just COVID related, in my opinion. This is really related to the three, factors that I mentioned. It's our lack of licensure, it's, the high taxes, and it's our thriving illicit market. But in other states, I mean, the states that are still growing, but maybe flatlined a little bit, I should say. Those are the states that are tourism heavy states. So Nevada, for example, 80% of cannabis sales happen in Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is. And so, Nevada has been hit really hard. Same thing, Colorado's, heavy tourism markets like Denver and Breckenridge and Aspen. We start to see, especially in Aspen and Breckenridge, they were hit much harder than Denver, for example. So we know that the tourism aspect is kind of key in a state's performance. But overall, our sales are continuing to grow significantly. And I think by 2024, MJ Biz in their fact book just reported on this recently. I mean, cannabis sales are going to surpass craft beer. So,
Wow.
it's we've already surpassed, I think, what the NBA does. And this is a massive, massive opportunity that we don't even know what this is going to look like yet. And it's also really interesting to see just like the job creation that's coming. I think another kind of stat that came out of that report was that for every dollar that goes into the cannabis world, so every dollar purchased at a dispensary puts $2.50 back into our economy. And I think those are some of the numbers that a lot of our policymakers don't quite understand, how beneficial cannabis will be for our economy.
What an interesting ride we are all on. And I am grateful to you for the work that you're doing to spread this education, to provide this insightful data for a market that desperately needs it. It's very important work, and I think it will only facilitate a more efficient and a more transparent and a more knowledgeable cannabis industry. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you as well. I mean, it's all about these conversations, in my opinion, and
definitely
talking about it from a data perspective and a social perspective. And so, hopefully this will lead to faster rates of destigmatization and allow us to see the full capabilities of what the plant could do for us in a medical impact and in a social impact.
Absolutely. Well, Jocelyn, thank you so much again. And I hope that you continue to be well and stay safe and keep up the good work. And hopefully we can do this again soon sometime, maybe in person next time, huh?
I would love it. Let's do it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right. Right on. Take care, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. My thanks again to Jocelyn Sheltraw for joining me. If you are a member of the cannabis community and have a story you want to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can reach the show at hashitout at TRICHOMES.com. You can help others find the show by taking a moment to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at trichomes.com and following us on all social media. Hash It Out is produced by David Fortin and presented by trichomes.com. I'm RJ Balde. Thanks for listening.